I guess you all loved being told what not to do in my previous video series on items that I would never include in my home as an interior designer. I mean, if you're into being told what to do, then you've come to the right place. I figured I'd give you some positive reinforcement and show you some design elements that I would include in my own home and items that I always recommend for my clients when I'm designing their space, to make sure that it not only looks its best, but serves the best function and utilizes as much space as possible. I would also like to thank Milano for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get into it. The first one is an obvious but not so obvious one, and that's wall sconces on each side of the bathroom mirror. We aren't doing the light above anymore. It still works, yes, but it literally gives you the worst and the most unflattering light that you can have. Having two on each side really allows you to have that forward-facing light that is so popular and so flattering from every angle. I know you're taking selfies half the time in there. Don't lie, I know I do. So let's make sure you're looking your absolute best. The even lighting on each side is always going to be the most flattering, and bonus if you're applying your makeup in the bathroom, this makes the application so much easier and so much smoother because it gives you an overall even look. The lights from above tend to give you shadows that don't always look its best from above. This can also apply to LED backlit mirrors, especially if you can adjust the light temperature to best suit you and the actual space itself. Having a wall sconce on each side gives you the perfect opportunity to have a more artistic looking light to match the style of the bathroom and diffuse the light compared to those really standard 2 to 3 lights from above that honestly look so bad. They end up looking really cheap. And in our field, we call them the unholy trinity. For number 2, this can easily be applied to your existing space and doesn't have to be part of a renovation. But swapping out those standard switches for something that's more elevated in design and including dimmers while you're at it, this is going to be an absolute game changer. I have always found that no matter what lights you get, the lumen rating, which basically tells you how much light you're getting from the bulb, is usually pretty high and ends up being very bright in your space. Having a dimmer reduces the risk of that light being too bright and having an off-putting presence in the overall room. Dimmers are also great for really setting that relaxing and intimate mood in your dining room, if you're having dinner, your living room, or even your bedroom. And yes, I know what you're doing in there, so make it look intimate, make it a vibe. We don't need to have it bright because no one looks good in that unflattering light. I know I'm gonna get some hate for this one, but those standard white plastic light switches are absolutely terrible and they look super cheap because let's be real, they really are. I get they're standard and everyone has them, but let's be honest, they've never looked nice. And in most recent times, there have been so many developments in this field introducing new ones that can either blend into your space or stand out to have their own design element. Like, look at these options and tell me that they don't look amazing, because I will fight you on them because they do. A brass finish or even a matte one looks so chic. And if it's within the budget, you can even get the matching electrical outlets so the room looks consistent and you don't have these random white boxes that end up ruining the overall design and distract from how the space actually looks. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've seen a gorgeous, moody, and really well-designed space, and then I see white outlets around the perimeter of the room. I'm telling you, it kills the vibe, and I hate to see it. It's one of those elements that it really is all about the details, and these specific ones matter. The next design element that I always recommend applies to your kitchen backsplashes. Tiles, I find, have a tendency to become lackluster when it comes to the backsplash style, which is why I always recommend bringing up whatever stone you can use on the counter to carry up along the wall. Not only does it visually expand the look of the countertop, but if you're using a bold and dramatic stone, it really allows you to experience it on the vertical surface in other areas of the room that you're not going to see on the horizontal ones when you're working on the countertop. I find that this is a way more beautiful and seamless design detail to incorporate into the overall space. I know some people are against this one, but honestly, there isn't anything bad I can say about it. In my personal opinion and experience, there is nothing better than having the same finish matching here. It looks so good, and it takes the guesswork out of trying to find a backsplash to actually match your countertop, which is a huge bonus point because there are no grout lines on these flat surfaces to really allow you to have a super easy and cleanable surface that's 100% easy to maintain. I find that bathrooms also tend to get a bad rap, as the standard has always been tiles and, let's be honest, subway tiles, and more recently the 12 by 24 for the flooring and the walls. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I absolutely detest any tile in subway format, no matter small or large format. I have always gravitated towards a larger uniform format tile. If it's within the budget, I honestly prefer slabs, as it gives a much more cleaner and more symmetrical look in this way. But if it's not, I will always recommend going for a 30 by 30 in terms of sizing. Most bathrooms aren't large enough to begin with, so smaller format tiles with a lot of grout lines tend to make them look smaller and busier, comparing to large format ones that really expand the space visually, so it doesn't feel as small, because you're actually extending the look because there's less cuts with the grout itself. In my opinion, larger is always better, and they've always looked more expensive than a smaller format, and the pricing is pretty comparable. Larger format in the low to mid tier scales anywhere between a $12 to $25 a square foot, which ends up costing you less in the overall footprint because you don't need as many tiles because they're much larger than the smaller format. Speaking of large format tiles, I want to show you a current project for a client that includes these tiles in the bathroom. We opted for a large format in the space because we wanted it to feel larger. So let me show you the software that I'm using to actually organize all my projects. Now listen to your daddy, because I am super OCD when it comes to organizing things. So I want to share with you how I keep everything easily accessible and understandable for myself and my team when we're working on a project, because there is a lot to keep track of. There are so many behind the scenes things that you don't even realize. If you've never heard of Milanote, it is an amazing tool to create mood boards, lists, and even organize projects for any creative. For this project in particular, I'm using it to create an entire visual mood board, and I also love that it's absolutely free, which makes it very accessible to anyone with a tablet. It's also great for anyone starting a business and you're working within a budget. You can start with sketches, add in finishes. Starting on any project, I always use 3 key terms to help visualize and really add in materials. Another really cool feature is you can add in the links to all your Pinterest boards. So my clients make one, I make one personally, and my team puts everything all in, which is all accessible, the links you can go to. It brings you directly to the boards and shows everyone's input. Depending where you're also finding other photos, you can put in direct links that can be linked to the board so everyone can see them. You can also use the web clipper for individual photos to add in and link directly to the source, so you're referencing everything where it's coming from. You can also create lists to stay on track for all the upcoming tasks and install dates, as well as every single detail that a person on the team is working on, so I can keep myself on track and everyone else can as well. On this Milanote link, I always have my contractors and my architects have access to all my PDFs for the drawing sets, and this is fantastic because usually these files are pretty large. This creates a direct link for them to access everything. They can also see all the 3D models for the clients, as well as the architects will always have a reference to everything. So I don't have to be emailed. They have the direct link with all the information. Starting on any project, you can create a beautiful collage of all your inspiration and the directions that you really want to show your clients and the rest of your team. I will always do a quick hand sketch and then have my team kind of take over in terms of finding the finishes. You can draw everything by hand and add it in, and all your team members can add to it in terms of the finishes, arrows, and call outs to make sure that every detail is picked up. Definitely try Milanote out. It is officially Design Daddy approved, and you can get all the information in the description box below. As I mentioned before, it's also free. Moving next into any major renovation that I get hired for is kitchens. It's no secret that this is one of the busiest and most used areas in any parts of your home, meaning that it's usually messy. Being mindful of this and intentional with the design to make it as simple as possible to maintain will help make your space look clutter-free, and will also bring the attention to the details of the space rather than just the mess. That way it doesn't appear to be overwhelming and it is actually enjoyable to be in. And if there's any takeaway from this, make sure that the handles are scaled properly on the cabinets. You do not need 10+ inch pulls on each of your cabinets. I find that it ends up just looking like a jungle gym at this point. In any kitchen, you have a combination of drawers and cabinets, and having hardware on every single one of them, I find just continues to add to the overall visual clutter, especially when the handles contrast the finish of the cabinets themselves, like black handles on white, for example. My 2 favorite ways of hiding may not be for everyone, but is always good in my experience. First is using an edge pull. This minimizes the busy look of those front-facing handles, although it makes it look as if there's nothing even there, so you can discreetly open a cabinet or a drawer with just a pull or a small lip that actually comes out the side or the top. Option 2, depending on the detail of your kitchen, is to have a lip pull on the actual fronts. This also makes it easy to open and close without the look of a handle or a knob interrupting the overall front style of the panel design. Your millwork always looks smooth and clean with this method, and if you're drawn to a more minimalistic style, this is the perfect way to go. Both of these styles are also great for people that may be developing arthritis, as pulling or even having a rotation can be uncomfortable. This way you don't have to use your wrist, it's super easy. There is also an option 3, which is a push-pull hardware, but I find these should be used more selectively, as you'll end up having more fingerprints on the cabinets themselves since you don't have anything to actually grab the cabinet. This does end up being sometimes more of a pain because you have to constantly be cleaning these. These also have the tendency to fail if the hardware is of not higher quality, so if you do have the option and it's within the budget, find the higher quality push-pull hardwares because they end up being so much more practical and they give you a really seamless look in the kitchen. Number 6 is when it comes to your flooring. I would usually say the bigger the better, but this can be said for a number of things, but flooring, it's very specific to the scale of your room. So bigger does not always mean better. They say something like the motion of the ocean or something. You know, you get what I mean.
You know what your nickname is, Mr. Big.
In terms of size, go with a plank that feels proportionate to the overall size of the room. If you have a small or narrow space and using a plank that's between 8 and 12 inches in width compared to your standard ones, it ends up looking super awkward. Same can be said for the larger. If you have an open concept and you're using 4-inch widths, which are standard for narrow planks, it adds a lot more visual clutter in the space and really looks off-putting. I personally find that anything between a 7 and a 9-inch width, can be said for a lot of things, can work with almost any scaled space to achieve that high-end look that still conforms to the most standard room sizes. I know I will get hate for this one, but I always recommend herringbone. Depending on what your interior design style is, I always find it looks so chic. And I also know it's not for everyone. Vanessa Hudgens had a really beautiful example of this in her AD home tour, which I reviewed a little while ago in the link below, and you can see it looks so good in the space. In any case, the placement of your wood is always really important. Always lay it out in the direction of travel into the space to match it in each room. Do not, and I repeat, do absolutely not change the direction in each room, otherwise it's gonna look like a complete mess. And yes, I have seen this way more times than I can count, and it is an absolute disaster. If there's one last piece of advice I can leave you with flooring, it is to always choose the most natural finish. Flooring is one of the most permanent finishes in your home, and it is super expensive to replace. Never choose anything that is not natural in color, meaning you can't find it in nature. And yes, this means gray. Save yourself the trouble and go with a natural, neutral color. That way it's going to look good with no matter what interior design style you choose and the decor elements in your home. Last on the list is skylights and light wells. If you have the opportunity to add these in anywhere, I always recommend them. In Toronto, many of these homes that I end up renovating are row or semi-detached, meaning you only have natural light coming from the front or the back, and a few on one side if you're really, really lucky. Light wells and skylights are the perfect way to really light up those darker spaces that lack any or all natural light. This is also an area I do not recommend going cheap on. Yes, skylights and light wells can be expensive to add into your home, but when you're opening up any exterior area and adding these in, if it is not done properly and sealed by a professional, leaking and interior damage can ruin the entire experience of having a skylight. Natural light, in my opinion, not only enhances the style within, but the overall mood of any room design, because let's be honest, light is timeless. It works with absolutely everything and just enhances the overall design. Not everyone can be blessed with a large enough space and expansive windows to really take all that natural light in. The amount of skylights I've added in clients' homes have made such a difference in the overall design that even if it's just above a staircase to light up that dark area, natural light is always in. Just like my other videos, I feel like I could talk endlessly when it comes to design details and homes that meet the Design Daddy seal of approval. However, we're gonna be ending it there. If you're eager to hear more, drop a comment below and I can always add to this list. Thanks for tuning in, and that's all for today. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And for all my daily design tips, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Mr. Phoenix Gray. And remember, if you're ever second guessing yourself, just ask, what would Design Daddy do?